Good morning. Chris Edwards here from sunny Market Drayton in the depths of Shropshire. As the outgoing president, I will chair this meeting today and have an AGM with me now, and hopefully you can see that too. Can I just draw your attention to the attached copy of the SDT 21-22 report as well, because I will be referring to that as we go through this meeting. I will be just taking you through each agenda point, then calling on others to support me in the delivery of the SDT annual AGM. So that'll be good. So without further ado, some apologies, and I'll read the apologies. Marion and I have got them anyway, so I'll just read them very quickly. So we've got apologies from Gary Andrews, Ken Burgess, Alex Duckworth, Charlene Harrison, Brian Rebeck, Michael Hickey, Ian Luxton, Jonathan Hogg, John Taylorson, Chris Askew, Lynn Hart, Mike Lewis, Kyle Allington, and then Dudley Bradley, Dave Cole, and Thomas Skolund. And so the objective really today is to take you through the meeting with reports from the trustees and then signing off a list of council members for this new and upcoming year, which I think we have two. Okay, Marion, are you all right with the apologies? I'll proceed. So item number 2, for those that are following me on the attachment to the invite. So firstly, to confirm the minutes of the annual general meeting held on the 20th of October 2021. Now in this meeting, we've agreed that we've taken offline an approver and a seconder, and in this case the Ian Gordon is the approver for the last minutes of the AGM, and the seconder is John Toohey. So that's Sean. Okay, so Ian Gordon and John Toohey. Item 3, matters arising not covered by the agenda today. There's nothing been raised from that meeting or by any other members, so we can quickly move on to that one. So nothing's come out of the last agenda. And then item number 4, and this is confirmation of officers and council members for the up and coming year of 22-23. And this I refer you to the note sent out by the organisers of this Zoom. So thank you to Bent Bright there, sent out to members, and we've received 2 nominations for new members, and that is Michael Bennett, who's at Research College. Michael teaches on our Eden programmes and a lot more, and is a keen supporter of all things dairy, a long history within the dairy industry, and I commend him to you. And then Chris Hay. Chris Hay is, for those that are in the old world of DuPont, now IFF, supplying us in the industry with a whole range of things, not much including things like cultures and stabilizers and emulsifiers. So a great addition to the team, especially up north of the border in Scotland as a section chairman, which is great news as we hope to do much more in Scotland as across the whole of the United Kingdom and Ireland. I'd like to highlight that Richie Clark has moved from a council member to be junior vice president. So Richie Clark has moved from being council member to junior vice president, and welcome him onto the conveyor belt that we know as the presidents, as they go through more of that a bit later on. That means in 4 years' time, he will take over from Mike Pinches as president. So there's a conveyor belt and a grand plan for us all as we move along the lifelong strategy of the SDT. We do also welcome these new council members wholeheartedly to the society, and we have, by convention now, a seconder and a proposer. The proposer for those 2 new additions and that movement is Ken Burgess. So the proposer is Ken Burgess, and the seconder is Richie Clark. Okay, so moving swiftly on, if you're all with me still on the report, I'll take you through item 5, which is to receive basically my report for the year 21-22. And I'll give an abridged version of that. I have written something down to stop me waffling as I have a great tendency to do, but it's quite a long adaptation really, but it's been another strange and successful year for both society and members going forward, and it's been busy as the rest of us, so I'll read if I don't mind. So there we go, another 12 months of utter whirlwind activity, locally, nationally, internationally, for all of us in business, the SDT, retired or otherwise. It's only on every reflection, I do a lot of that as I get older in life, where you just find out how much we all get up to with friends and family and businesses and societal activities. But as I reflect on this report in front of you and on your screens, those strange screens we've got used to over the last 2 or 3 years, for the year 21-22, we see the effect of energy and food prices on the rise on the back of high inflation. We all still feel emotionally and physically the effects of war, Brexit, climate change, COVID, or indeed any other pandemic that seems to have appeared in the last few months and years as we've gone through the last stage in all our lives, notably on the world stage that we now find ourselves as the United Kingdom within Brexit. So in the world of dairy, supply chain has seen significant pressures, both on price and availability. Farmers struggling with things like fuel, fertilizers and feed, the 3 Fs. I'm sure there's another 4 Fs somewhere, but I can't just think of it now. But it's basically been a challenge as we see the rise of vegan based products on our doorsteps, and notably, certainly for the dairy factories that are sitting on this call today, the effects of animal rebellion. And under animal rebellion, sitting under the wider Extinction Rebellion Society or society grouping. Whatever we feel though, it is my opinion as an outgoing president that we need to sort of look at that vegan and how that affects us. I know within Muller we are doing much more on that vegan route as we see changes in society. Either way, we have a struggling world population, close on 8 billion, well, actually hit 8 billion people last week. So we need to do something to feed these people. Now, a bit more into local affairs for the SDT. We saw 2 annual dinners last year, 2 annual autumn symposiums, as we now catch up the COVID effect and catch hold of ourselves as we go into the next 22-23 year. But I'll summarise it for you. On October the 20th, we held our first autumn symposium post-pandemic and even post-Brexit. We continue to grow our dinners, and I will come back to that, and symposia has demonstrated that the International Cheese and Dairy Awards 22. We had the presence of Amanda Owen at the annual dinner, attracting 155 guests. Bearing in mind where we started some years ago with 20 or 25 people at Rees Heath sat around some round tables, we have moved heaven and earth to ensure that our teams come to at least once a year, come together and sit down together. And I'll revert back to that in a minute. Again, we kept on our efforts on recognising the youth that enters into our dairy industry known as Eden. For those that don't know, European Dairy Education Network. There we go. This is vital ground and will continue under Nick's reign as vital ground. The prestigious Brian Peacock Award was presented to Vince Adams, Head of Site Food and Safety Quality at Saputo at Davidstow. We then moved on to our spring conference at Lockery campus early in 22. So making sure that we are relevant across the United Kingdom and Ireland. The success of the SDT is on the local stage, and to that end we saw our SDT Midlands and Northern section invited to the National Milk Records at Wolverhampton, where we had dinner afterwards, but again a great visit, and it is the localness of our society that will win and grow us membership, I'm convinced. Stretching globally, we had the attendance at the Nordic Dairy Conference in Malmö, Sweden, and I see this as an ever-growing opportunity for us, where there was 335 delegates there, including Dr. Liz Whitley, who went for us, and we will reciprocate a visit here at Market Drayton to the Nordic Dairy Congress team early in January. We then had our second major annual event, 22 Summer Symposium and Dinner, only 7 months after the delayed 21. Great event to see 70 delegates there sitting down at the newly established International Cheese and Dairy Awards, which is growing in its success. Again, partnership. Another dinner followed, seems to be a bit of a trend, having a dinner. where 180 guests, so 155, 180 guests, another record, sat down. And I just reflect the time that all of us that knew Soren von Seeld, that set us off on this path, this strategy, some 7 or 8 years ago, I think, where we would sit down 200. So I'm hoping that the baton, as it changes over to Nick, in the next 2 years at least, we will hit that target. I'm sure we will. Now, Matt Tebbit entertained us there from Channel 4 and BBC Saturday Morning Kitchen Live, and interviewed really well by Marion on the day and grilled him on his life experiences. Again, we had our second award ceremony for the Eden students, and I reiterate, it's vital ground. None of us are getting any younger. I think as yet, cryogenics hasn't improved so much so that we can freeze ourselves. So we need this youth, and I commend them all to you. And finally, that award ceremony at the Summer Symposium saw Ian Luxton receive my presidential award for the amount of work that he's done over the last 30 or 40 years, right back to the early joining of the society in the 1970s. So Ian received my award for that, and that was a real honour for me to do on behalf of Belt and Cheese and the Society of Dairy Technologists. So even more success at the impact factor. And we have to keep returning here to the International Journal of Dairy Technology, which took a huge leap forward a couple of years ago under the directorship and leadership of Michael Mullen and his editorial team. And yet again, we see ourselves at the top of the list of the food science journals. And to Michael and his team, I extend my sincere and uttermost thanks. Now, our purpose is important. In order to make the advantages of becoming an SDT member more visible, we're getting on the road. And Nick and Marion have already visited a couple of dairies, and we'll do more of that over the next 2 years, as Nick will probably talk about later on. It's important that we connect not only our education societies, ourselves as a sort of an alumni, but our partners, our sponsors, which have supported us throughout the last year, but also then into the dairy industry companies, of which I sit in one of the biggest dairies in the UK at Muller Market Drayton. So in summary, which you're probably glad I'm coming to the end, I'd like to thank all the officers and members of the council for their commitment, enthusiasm, energy that have stepped up to the mark and supported me in quite a busy job that I sit in over the last 12 hectic months. I reiterate a special shout out and thanks to our executive officer, Marion Pusey, and to Michael Mullen, our 2 principal officers. We've got a challenging market out there. Don't be any underestimation about the market as it unfolds in the next 2 years. We will need to stand alongside our industry as the alumni and make sure we have the support ready for those young people that are coming into our society to help them in their careers. Without those at the top of the industry, such as my position, factory managers, and more widely as chief executives and things, we won't survive. Now, our society has a very broad church at its base and a reach across the UK and Ireland, and importantly, globally, note the Nordic Conference, and into South Africa, as we've done many years ago. But as we have proven and more accessibility using online and expert seminars and webinars, as we're doing today, using technology. And as in 2020, we'll continue to plan and have more events in a very different society as we push our local sections along, making sure that we've got visibility of industry. I strongly encourage all our members to be actively engaged in these events as much as possible, 1 or 2 hours here out of your week. And I know there's lots of them, but this is our society. And we have a passion for dairy. We do. We wouldn't be here otherwise. So join us on our journey. Support Nick in his presidency as he goes forward, and we'll keep writing to you all to make sure you're fully informed of what the society is up to, and as we try and return to some sort of normal business-like approach to global trade. And I do pray that the war, or any war across the world, notably in Europe, comes to a swift end, because it affects us all. So that concludes my report today. Hopefully I haven't waffled too much, and hopefully you've got the chance to see it in there, because there's some superb photographs, primarily of me, I have to say, but everybody looking as great as they do at these events, and I thank everybody for that. Okay, I'm now going to the end of that report. I think I have to just check on that. What do I have to do? Yeah, so confirmation of that, that's fine. I'm now going to hand over at item 6 to receive the Honorary Treasurer's Report and approve the annual reports to the Society for 21-22. And therefore, can I hand over to our prestigious Mr. Alan Stack?
Thank you, Chris. I hope everybody can hear me very well. And I'm sure you've all read the full audited accounts that have been sent to you and understood every bit of it. But maybe a little bit of a summary. We prepared a break-even budget for the last financial year. And thanks to some very good results in several areas, we've come in with a very positive financial result, which means actually we've got a bit more money to invest in some of our activities. Where's the money come from? The increased number of people going to the dinner, the success of the journal, and an increase in membership fee receipts. What I would also like to say is a huge thank you for all the people who support these various events, those who pay to come to them, those who bring along their advertising and help that way, those who sponsor various tables at the annual dinner and so on. Without everybody participating in the way we do, we would not have such a successful year. Having said that, I would like to commend the accounts to everyone. And then I have a little problem. We need to approve the accounts. And if anybody has any objections, I just ask them to raise a hand. And as I can see no hands raised anywhere, I believe we can approve the accounts and then move on to the publication committee report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alan. So it's my duty to report on the activities of the publications committee. And we have, as a society, we have a major charitable objective, which is the provision of technical information. And we do this by our events, which Chris has described, and our publications. And our publications have had a very successful year. The International Journal of Dairy Technology, which is our flagship publication, has gone online only. And so that means we have no restriction in page budget. So if we want to take more papers, we can take more papers. That has been a very successful process over the year. The quality of the journal has gone up and up and up, largely down to the tenacity of Dr. Michael Mullen, who is our editor of the journal, but he's also supported by a group of associate editors, including Professor Mehta, Professor Gomez de Cruz, Dr. Apria and Dr. Nivedita Datta, who are associate editors. And Dr. Tom O'Callaghan joined us last year. This means that the numbers of papers that we've had submitted have continued at a very high level, and our impact factor has, as of for 2021, was 4.286. Now, this is a slight decrease on the year before, but it's the only reason it's a decrease is because the methodology for calculating it has changed slightly. And as Chris mentioned in his report, we're actually in the top quartile for all food science and technology journals. And we're actually the #1 journal for milk processing globally. So, you know, we are very, very proud of our achievements in that. The other big strand we have is our technical series, which over the last year was made online for members. So you have access to this wonderful series of books. And there is a new book in the process of being published and will be published in the next few months, which is sensory profiling of dairy products. And we're really grateful to Dr. Tui for editing that book and collating all of the authors. It's a big effort to do that. And I think from what I can gather, it's a bit like herding cats. The other online strand that we have for members is the Dairy Technology Handbook, which is extremely useful, and that's continually being updated. And Andrew Wilby is working on a fourth edition of that. Andrew is also preparing an ice cream handbook, which will be published online when he's finished his final revisions of that. And then the final two strands are that you as members are kept up to date with everything by our newsletters, which Marion sends out monthly, and I'm sure you'll join with me in saying how welcome they are. It's nice to keep in touch with everybody and hear about everything that's going on. And finally, from when I was originally executive director, we now have a wonderful slipstream into Dairy International. And I'm not saying that was my doing at all. What I mean is that we were unheard of really in the Dairy Industries International, but actually now every month that is published, Marion manages to get something into it. It's amazing, and I thank Marion for her tremendous work on all of these things. It's no mean feat. Whilst I chair the committee, I do very little really. Marion does most of it. So so thank you everybody, and I hope you enjoy our publications.
Okay, so if I take just back just a small note to everybody out there on the virtual world of wherever we are. If you've got any objections or certainly to the votable items on this report, please raise your hand at the end, and then we'll take those later on. So that's, if you've got any objections, please raise your hand at the end. That'd be good, because it's all difficult for everybody, this, but it might be something out there you just thought of or something. It's not necessarily for anything to offer an opinion or anything, because it's an AGM, so it's very factually based. But if there's an objection to anything that's votable, then please come back to us. Okay, item 8. Item 8. If you follow me back on your agenda, item 8. So this is for us to look at going out to tender for an auditor. And we need to vote on this, that we need to just put out in the general world there and understand where the auditing. We've had some issues, I think, with auditors we go being forward over the last couple of years, and we need to secure an auditor that's going to meet our purposes. So we're looking for your approval at this meeting by raising your hands now if you don't agree. So raise your hands if you don't agree that we can go out to tender for an auditor. Last couple of seconds. I'm just monitoring the list as well. Okay, thank you, members, for giving us the confidence for the council to go out and look for another auditor by tender. Number 9 is any other business. I've got nothing raised as AOB, which is relatively good news as we go into a bit later on and hand it over to Nick. So good news that we haven't got any anything for any other business. But if there are any other business items going forward as a wide, I would commend to you all, part of what I'm learning in the society is that we need to share a lot more about what we do. And if there's no other points, I'd like to just go into the next phase of the meeting, which is where I'll be handing over to Nick Edwards, and I'll just say a few words as I hand over. So this part asks some reflections of my tenure what a whiz-bang type of 2 years that's been. I mean, to meet regularly in Dairy UK's headquarters over the last, I don't know, 10 years or so that I've been on the council, was always phenomenal. The train journey down, the meeting of friends there and the sandwich and all that sort of stuff made it a lot more friendship-based. And we went through a journey of going on Zoom and Teams and any other platform that you can imagine to try and get through COVID. And it's actually worked quite well, but we did miss those opportunities of getting together. But I think the mix now, and you can see this on here, some of you know the symposium very well, some of you know the webinars very well, and so on. And it has been a very good mix, and I commend it to you all. And I am a bit of a dinosaur. I do like to meet people. So getting back involved into the various dairy events around the globe, notably, and you would hear me say this, the International Cheese and Dairy Awards as the chief steward or outgoing chief steward at that. It's important that we do meet at these events and support the events, whether it's the World Cheese Awards, whether it's international congresses on dairy, because otherwise we stay in our little bubbles, such as here at Market Drayton in our Muller bubble. So if there was just a few words I'd share with you, I'm extremely proud of the team. I've got a challenging job here within Muller, and each and every one of them have deputised for me, made up the stories where I wasn't at various events or something and taken me through. But I do hope that I've managed as president to keep the society moving forward, and I think we can demonstrate that through the dinners. I like a good dinner. With 180, hopefully we'll breach that 200 gap. The next point is friendship. You know, we continue to grow as friends, and if you're not involved now, get involved. And if you know people that aren't involved, get them involved, because it's a bit more friendlier as we get more and more people in, and that connectivity grows. And I just point you to our purpose. If you need a sales pitch, an elevator pitch, get into the purpose. Send it on an email group. And Nick may well talk about some corporate membership ideas that we're looking at. That will give us a link into companies like Muller. And I can push that out amongst my teams here, so we get more involved with our teams here. And the last thing really is the dinners. I'll report back to the dinners because I absolutely love them. You know, I'm a bit of a showman, and I do like the fact that we've had a bit of a stage and a mic, so I can always relate to that. But I've enjoyed those and getting back out of COVID and Brexit and back onto a stage where we can talk with each other and share stuff. Those are my reflections. So real positive stuff. And I think the society has got a real relevant place with our industry, students, its alumni place, its journals, its information, and finally then into industry. And that's where I hope the corporate membership will drive us back into industry and get some notable people in there. Right. Okay, those are my reflections. I'm going to hand over now to my very good friend, Nick Edwards, who started his career, believe it or not, as a mill chemist in the paper industry, and he still reminds us of this. This led to an interest in specialty chemicals and his first sales job at Betts Limited, where he sold something, apparently. Sold specialty chemicals to the paper industry. There's a trend here. After 12 years, he was given the opportunity to move to Ashland Oil Company to work in the water treatments division. And there he helped to incorporate an acquisition into the company. Once that challenge was done and dusted, he was fortunate to be offered sales director at Holchem, which is where most of us know him from. I know it's got some other fancy name now, which I can't pronounce half the time, but certainly as the Holchem boss, we all knew what he was doing. A keen advocate of the dairy industry, living on a dairy farm, he will now pick up the challenge left by successive presidents, notably me as the outgoing president, and this great society ours is in great hands. Nick, welcome to the presidential chair. Nick.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you. I hope everybody can hear me. The first thing I have to do is to put this chain around my neck. So let's hope this works. It's a bit difficult to do this on a Zoom call, but anyway, here we go. Okay, I'm going to share some screens in a minute. But firstly, I must say, Chris, I'm absolutely delighted to take over the reins of the presidency of the SDT from you. I look very much forward, as you've done in your period, to the next couple of years and working very hard for the society and the members, because it's all about our membership. I must say it's been quite a long apprenticeship, as you alluded to earlier. It's a bit like our new king, I suppose. You know, it was 2 years of junior vice president, 2 years of vice president, and then here we are now. But before I go any further, I just must thank you, Chris, for your dedication to the role over the last 2 years. The people that know you and know you well know that you've got a remarkably busy job at Muller, plus a heavy workload with the ICDA. And you've carried us through some very difficult times. You've carried us through COVID. You've carried us through the aftermath of Brexit. So all these are difficult periods where you've steered and given us good guidance, etc., etc. Going forward, it's going to be a big job, but we've got plenty of things to talk about in the way we are going to take this society forward. So I'm just going to share some slides now, which just might help us guide us through this. Firstly, no one person runs the society, it's a team effort. And for myself, I'm supported by a Vice President, Mike Pinches. Most of you will know Mike Pinches. And now our newly appointed Junior Vice President, Richie Clark. Marion Puzzi, Executive Director, is the day-to-day manager, as Chris has already alluded to, and she's the chief sorter of all activities. And without someone with her dedication, we would not have the society that we have today. We are all part of a council or a board, you know, we are representing the members of the society. So it's the members that make our society and make our society great. Let's see if I can move the slides on. Okay, as Chris alluded to, we do have a strategy within our business as a society. And having a progress of junior vice president, vice president, does give us that longevity in achieving our goals in our strategy. So the presidency will be asking you again in the next 2 years to have your input into this strategy. And we do this through our satisfaction survey. One area that we have been considering over the past few months and have visited some dairies to take soundings is the introduction of a company or group membership scheme. We could call it corporate membership. This is hopefully to offer wider benefits to companies, the people that employ us. We would like company support for membership and more company involvement in the society to support our members' involvement. Also, we will be continuing to develop our e-learning packages, thanks very much to Ken Burgess. As this is a key knowledge transfer activity that is valued by membership and it very much fits with the aims of the society and the way we run our business lives today. We've seen a great success with our e-learning packages, and we want to develop this further for you, the members. One of the other threads that I wish to carry on and develop further is our strategy that we introduced a few years back to reintroduce regional events, local to where people live throughout the UK and Ireland. We've had successful events in the Northwest, and we've had a recent success with an event down in the Southwest this year. And we'll be looking to expand on this format with the support of our regional chairpersons. I would also like to see stronger links with other organisations within the dairy industry. We've already started down this route with Dairy UK, BFBI, and more recently the Nordic Dairy Council, which is bringing us into a wider realm of the dairy industry across the Nordic countries. Perhaps we could be more aligned with some others as well. This could open up more value, opportunities and benefits to our membership and broaden their horizons and our horizons. Thinking more about horizons and harking back to the theme of education that Chris mentioned earlier, we need to continue to maintain our links with the centres of education excellence in the UK and Ireland, and to help those who wish to join the industry is also a very must objective. So recruitment, retention of personnel within our industry must be part of our responsibility as a linked society. To this end, a member of Reef staff, as you have just heard, is joining our board, and we would welcome others from other educational establishments to be part of the society as well. Finally, one of the major successes over the past few years is the journal. Chris has already mentioned this, with an ever-increasing impact factor beyond our expectations. This can only be attributed to Michael Mullen, the editor, and the publications team led by Liz, and we've heard Liz's report on the reasons why. But these guys have done a fantastic job in raising the quality and the profile of the journal. So, as it's one of our biggest income streams and a huge showcase for the SDT into the dairy world, which is a very important part of what we do. And I know Michael and Liz have lots of ideas on how we can grow this still further in the coming years. So our aim as a board is to deliver value to our membership. We are a membership-driven organisation. So stronger local regional activities, a corporate membership scheme to draw our businesses into the world of the SDT, the extension of the e-learning topics, closer links with other organisations, and maintaining and growing the journal's impact factor are all on our list for the next 2 years. If we can achieve this, we will hand over a stronger society to Mike Pinchers in 2 years' time, and then we can continue these objectives by growing our passion for dairy. Just a few more words on our upcoming events in our calendar for 2023. The spring conference the plan for the spring conference is now well underway, and this will be held at the North Lakes Hotel near Penrith in Cumbria. The theme, as you can see, is heat processing and energy efficiency in the dairy product manufacturing. This is going to be a very good conference, I believe, and we already have people booking onto this event as we speak. So that's our spring conference, which is coming up in March next year. The summer event again will be a cheese-themed event, and it will take place in conjunction with the International Cheese and Dairy Awards as normal. We have a key sponsor already in place, Diversey, and Marion has done wonders in securing Helen Sharman, the astronaut, and as I didn't realize, she's also a chemist, as our key speaker. So please do come in and join us at this event on the 28th of June next year in conjunction with the ICDA. A new one for us. In October next year, we will be attending the Dairy Industries Expo. I think this event has been about 8 years in the planning. So we're all looking forward to this event and expecting a lot. So, but we shall be there and we shall have a platform in some way at this event. It's a little way off to give you detail at this stage, but it's certainly something that we've included in our diary as it's going to be an important industry event next year. And then in November, we have our autumn conference, which is moving across the water to Cork, Southern Ireland. And the theme of this conference is digitalization. And I know the team in Southern Ireland are already putting this program together. And you can see some of the topics that are going to be discussed at this conference there on the screen on the right-hand side, and a first outlining of a running program on the left. There will be a visit to Moore Park Research Centre as well, a conference dinner, as well as the actual presentations that are going on. So really, it's a good 2 days, 3-day event that is going to take place in Cork at UCC in November next year. Okay. There's a few more pictures from the previous events that they've run in UCC. Okay, so at this stage, I'd like to thank you all for attending our AGM. And as you can see, we have a very strong and vibrant society heading into 2023. We have some challenges, as Chris already alluded to, in our business lives, in our personal lives, but no doubt we will be able to overcome those by working together and keeping our strong relationships going. So at this point, I would like to close the AGM. Okay, so having closed the AGM, we'll now move on to the webinar. Okay. This is part 2 of the webinar, which commenced last week with 3 excellent papers that were selected from the International Journal of Dairy Technology. I'm now very pleased to introduce Michael Reitmaier from the Technical University of Munich, School of Life Sciences, Food Process Engineering Department, who will give you this presentation on compositional analysis of dairy side streams and assessment of their applicability as diafiltration media. But before Michael takes to the screen, not the stage in this case, just a few words to say about Michael and his history. Michael, after studying food technology at the University of Applied Sciences in North Munich, North Munich. Michael started work in the quality department of a pharmaceutical company. From 2007 to 2021, he worked as an engineer at the chair of food and bioprocess engineering at the Technical University of Munich. Over the last few years, his work is focused on membrane separation processes in the dairy sector, which his PhD thesis will be related to. Right, I'm now going to stop sharing my slides and hopefully Michael can share his.
Yes, so thank you very much, Mr. Edwards, for the brief introduction. I'm trying to share my screen for the presentation. Before I start with the actual topic of the analysis of dairy side streams and the potential application for diafiltration, put this introduction a bit more forward for those who don't know our food process engineering research unit. So we are part of the Technical University of Munich. We are close to Munich. We have different locations of the university in Munich, Central, Garching, and Weinstefan. I'm sorry. So no. Okay. And I want to thank my so far supervisor, Mr. Kolotzik. Maybe some of you know him, Professor Kolotzik. He retired last year. And we have a new professor, a new head of our chair with Professor Petra First. The focus of our studies, so this is our chair located in Weinstefan, very traditional place where we also have the oldest brewery of the world. so where they have documents that it was founded in 1040. Maybe someone knows this brand. We focus our research in the future on food textures, micromechanics, and drying techniques, visualization of particles and structures in also dairy products. So we go a bit away from membrane separation and purification approaches, more with the new head, Professor First, to structure effects and structuration. And nevertheless, my work focuses on membrane separation and purification of proteins. Just to give a brief introduction to this, so I worked on a research project that was financed part by the government and the other part with this committee of several companies, dairy producers, membrane producers like Tami, for example, companies, the GEA, for example, that engineering companies of membrane units. So they all are interested in optimizing this process and the functionality of casein as a product. So the aim was, if you see this process as a kind of standard process in several dairies, we have a starting material, we have skim milk that should be separated, fractionated into micellar casein in its relatively native state as MCC, where the filtrate should wash out whey proteins in its native state to obtain a pure whey protein product and a pure casein product at the very end with special functionality, special nutritive benefits. And normally this is carried out with a microfiltration membrane. There are different systems, but nevertheless, it's always microfiltration. And what is applied typically in industry is that you have a washing medium to wash out the whey proteins with deionized water. This typically also washes out lactose and serum minerals to have really pure protein at the very end. So what is known a bit that also this deionized water modifies a bit the casein micelles. So our idea was maybe we could use other media to optimize the sustainability. Of course, deionized water is not the cheapest and the most sustainable medium to use, and reduce the costs maybe if we find alternatives, and also modify and improve, let's say, the product functionality of this caseins, which reacts relatively strongly regarding the ionic milieu. So what we did first, and what is also presented in this paper, is a preparatory study on the composition of this media. Especially we focused on side streams that are really available in dairy practice and where dairy doesn't have to buy chemicals or things like that, which also would reduce sustainability again. So there are known that there are several side streams from filtration, from whey and acid whey or milk itself. But the question is, how are they composed really in the industrial practice? So we started with a screening of around about 90 samples from really dairy production, taken from dairy production. They were cold stored and analyzed in our institute. So we had different permeates, also vapor condensates, and as a kind of special, maybe thermocured whey. And we did several chemical analytics on factors that are known to impact the filtration, like the pH, the ionic composition, and of course, the composition regarding proteins, especially because if we want to wash out proteins, it should not include proteins, the washing medium. So what we got from this is knowledge on the compositional variation in the dairy practice, and how, as a benefit also, how this depends in practice on process parameters, because you can filtrate at 10 degrees, at 50 degrees, on the single processes, maybe then also on membranes that are used. And what we also see, so we sampled different processes over time. Are there fluctuations over processing duration over times if you take the samples at different dates? So what we see is a summary, maybe. We have a conductivity of single samples. So every dot is a single sample over the pH that was measured. So we have we depicted here the roundabout the ionic strength represented by the conductivity over the pH, which both have high impact on filtration also. So when we here have skim milk as in its native ionic composition, we can see that we have, for example, UF permeate from acid way, sour way with a very high conductivity, a very low pH. We have NF and UF permeates from skim milk, sweet whey that vary a lot in their composition. So this is special for this because we have different processes, different membranes, and of course different sources of whey that also maybe vary in their composition in the dairies over the day. Then what we saw here was that we could also use some different types of water. We also analyzed some tap water that has also, in comparison to skim milk, also if it's hard in calcium hardness, very low ionic conductivity, ionic strength, and a bit higher pH. And what we saw for reverse osmosis permeates and vapor condensates is that we are very low in ionic strength, conductivity, and a high variation in pH, but altogether maybe not too far from skim milk pH. I'm sorry. Here we see one special where we come later to concrete details why we have here one process where we have a higher conductivity and a lower pH. So what this means if we apply this for filtration is that we would have a strong change of ionic strength and pH. So the milk ionic composition would change around the casein micelles, what could impact the process and the micelles, the product itself. So of course, I will not go through these tables, just give you a hint on this. We are relatively high in conductivity for UF permeates, where we have different sources, skim milk, sweet whey, sour whey. And so we see sour whey with a typically very low pH compared to the others, a relatively increased ionic strength conductivity. So this is a kind of special liquid that we also see later on what happens when we apply it. And for thermocut whey, we found out that we have too high residual whey protein content to use it really as a washing medium. Besides that, it's also low in pH and high in conductivity. And of course, also at the end, the compositional values depend a lot on the source material mainly. For nanofiltration permeates, we expected that it's lower in ionic strength. What we also saw, it depends a lot on the membrane that is used. That is maybe also expectable. But what we also see is that we have a high variation of the values. So between different sources, different producers, and also overproduction, we see differences. So here we have a high fluctuation of compositional values due to also variation between different processes or producers, but also over duration of processing due to compositional differences of the whey that is used over time, because a dairy often produces different cheeses, so they also have different composed sweet whey as a source material for this process. So expectable was here that if these values, the variation has a high impact, it will not be really applicable because the process might fluctuate a lot. So for reverse osmosis permeates, we could also have skim milk, sweet whey as source material, also sour whey. For the sour whey, we found very high conductivity and very low pH, which is not expectable, as for reverse osmosis, there should be pure water coming out, what we kind of saw for this processes. So there were really low values for the ionic contents of individual salts, so it can be kind of evaluated as purified water. And what I also know is that it's already often applied in dairies as a washing material or a medium. And what we found out for this one process with 3 sampling points is that the producer knows that the membrane is defective. So for application, this could mean, if you would apply this, that you should, of course, check your composition during processing if you apply this for further processing steps. So continuous monitoring would be suitable. For vapor condensates, we roundabout found the same. It was even higher in purity if you take a look at this ionic compositional data. And regarding the pH, it indicates us also for the reverse osmosis permeate, it indicates a high variation. But at the end, to be honest, we have to say that the measurement of the pH is really hard and it fluctuates over time also. So it's not very stable because there are so little ions in this liquid. So this fluctuation of the pH does not really stand for a high impact because it's caused by single ions. So we could expect that this vapor condensates or reverse osmosis permeates kind of can work as like deionized water for filtration. So with further studies, which I will also present a bit in this presentation, we wanted to take a look on really applying this media or differently composed media for filtration, where the change of the ionic composition should impact colloidal interactions and therefore the deposit formation, the flux representing the filtration speed, but maybe also transmission of whey proteins, so the separation effectiveness. And also later we wanted to take a look at MCC powders and their functionality produced from different diafiltrations. In the first trial, we tried to simulate this variation of NF permeates that we found in practice. And we saw with slight variation, high stands for relatively high ionic strength, low for relatively low ionic strength. We varied the medium over a longer diafiltration progress. The black dots represent the flux, so the filtration speed, and as we can see, it directly followed the composition of the media. So if we have small changes of nanofiltration media in practice, it would have a high impact. So our conclusion would be that it's not really a good suggestion to apply this media, except you have a really stable composition. Okay, this is just a repetition of this. When we take a look at another application where we tested different composed water types, so where we have deionized water that increases flux over application as diafiltration medium versus ultrafiltration permeate, which reduces flux kind of a little bit over longer progress. We found with different waters that could be available in dairies as well. Hard top water, mid hard top water, and softened water, which means calcium was replaced by sodium by ionic exchange. We found that we are in between these two other media, and so it could be an idea to use tap water, for example, if it's not too hard, just to replace deionized water. What we also saw by this special compost media, that the main impact is from calcium strength, calcium hardness, and not from the overall ionic strength or the pH of this media. As deionized water and saftened water that is composed as top water, except from the calcium, has nearly the same flux. And as a kind of outlook, and I'm really happy that we just got a recently accepted manuscript also in the International Journal of Dairy Technology. We took a closer look at the applicability of acid whey permeate with a very reduced pH, with the calcium and phosphate, which maybe for the first moment seems to be not a good idea to make a casein into the direction of chelation or aggregation, bring it into aggregation. But we thought maybe we can directly use this, and this was also what we also saw. If we apply a filtration at 10 degrees, the casein will not gel. Also, the pH is very low with the acid whey permeate. Of course, the flux is reduced, as you can see here, when we apply this medium as a diafiltration medium. So the idea was to apply this at the very end of a normal fractionation process to induce a chelation of the MCC. But that's the main point. If the casein is in a concentrated state, liquid at 10 degrees, we can take it out from the device and bring it to chelation, to direct chelation, just by a temperature increase. So this was investigated in more detail in rheometer and different concentrations, different degrees of exchange of the ionic environment by acid whey permeate. And this could be an idea for a relatively simple way to gel concentrated casein, as it is not that easy to ferment it due to the high calcium content buffering capacity. And maybe it would also be applicable for 3D printing. So these are the main ideas, just as an outlook on different functionality aspects, filtration aspects. So I want to thank you for listening to my presentation. I'm open to any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. That was extremely interesting. Yes, we do have a few questions. We've got about 5 minutes to cover questions. So if anybody does want to post any questions, please use the Q&A button. If we don't get through all the questions, then what we will do is we will answer, or get Michael to answer all the questions, and these will be posted on the member section on our website. But anyway, let's have a look at some of the questions. I think there's a question from Michael Mullen. Has there been any research on what happens to exosomes during the filtration process, Michael?
I'm sorry, I didn't get to what happens to what?
Exosomes. EXOSOMES.
Exosomes. I'm not really familiar with that. I'm sorry. Is this bacteria related or?
I don't know, Michael. I can ask Michael Mullen to perhaps to elaborate on his question, which hopefully he will do now. Let me move to the second question. It's been posted by Chris Edwards. What is the impact on cleaning time, chemicals, and any processing time, or for any signs of TMP changing, if that applies?
So when you apply different media or
Yeah.
the acid way permeate?
I think he's talking about when you apply different media.
So we didn't really investigate on the cleaning effect afterwards, but as far as I can say, we didn't have really problems with our standard cleaning after filtrations, even after this filtration with acid wear permeate, where we had, of course, a very dramatic or increased deposit formation. And so even this was cleanable in standard cleaning with
So
alkaline followed by acid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you didn't change anything in your cleaning processes
Not
based
really,
on
no.
the different.
And the membrane resistance readjusted to standard.
Right. Okay. From me, do you think any of these processes will eventually become commercially based? Do you think there will be ways that these things will be able to be used commercially going forward?
Yeah, of course. Like application of tap water, of course, would be relatively simple to apply. It could, what we saw in the lab, that we have lesser changes to the casein micelle and its structure than with deionized water. So it could kind of improve micellar casein to a more native state. If you at the end keep the calcium level as it was in milk roundabout, the ionic calcium, that it does not go out of the micelle, what happens with the deionized water. Some of the calcium leaves the micelle because of the chemical equilibrium. And with tap water, you kind of can avoid at least some of this. And for this acid way, of course, it would be really nice if a lot of companies would apply this to reuse this acid way permeate, which is somehow often a kind of problematic side stream.
Okay.
And of course, one benefit was that in this MCC gel, you have some aromatic components from acid way. So it's not an acid gel simply, it's also with aroma profile.
Right. Okay. Good. Thank you, Michael. Michael Mullen is actually posted some more information, and he is saying that interest in exosomes is relatively new. There are very small secreted organelles in milk with biological properties. Now, does that help you, Michael?
Not really. So I didn't take a look at these things. So yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was not included in my studies so far.
No. Okay. So, well, perhaps we can pick up on that a little later and include it when we post questions back onto the website. Okay. Don't think there's any more questions. Just check. No. So, Michael, look, I'd like to thank you very much for that presentation. Obviously, some very interesting work going on there, and hopefully you can bring it to a commercial proposition at some point that will help everybody within in their processing plants. Having thanked Michael, I would also like to say a big thank you for the other speakers that presented last week's presentation, because everybody's had to give up their own time for this, and obviously everybody's time is very valuable. So we do thank you all for working with us at the SDT on this. All the webinar videos from all presenters will be uploaded in the coming weeks into the members section of the SDT website. I'd like to thank you all for attending part 2 of this webinar and our AGM. And I now close both the webinar and the AGM fully. So thank you very much and for attending, and hope to see you all at our next meeting when we all get together in March next year. Goodbye.